The vibrations are different, not like planet Rave. Planet Rave's sound of guns, anger, frustration. There was no one to talk to from Planet Rave to understand. We set up a colony of black people here. See what they can do on the planet all their own without any white people there. They could drink in the beauty of this planet. The vibrations are different. The vibrations are different.
You see, space was expanding faster than light speed, moving at the thought. Only thought can exceed. A picosecond after the Big Bang, music of the spheres before the ears of the universe was now sang. Small enough to fit in your hand. Fraction later, it was the size of Mars and becoming greater. That's the fire in the bones. That's the fire in the bones. That's the fire in the bones you get in Jeremiah and Hebrew scripture, and it's in every one of the six figures. And I could have gone on and on and on. We talk about Fannie Lou Hamer, wish I had a chapter on her. Talk about James Baldwin, wish I had a chapter on it. And I'd write a dissertation on Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah, Thank you guys so much. What you just saw, that was Allie Bradley with a piece called Kush. Give it up one more time. Amazing. Well, welcome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Welcome to the invitation. First topic, political participation. In July, our friend Amber Iman, we wrote a Facebook message that turned into a call of action. And a group of artists joined together because we were tired, we were confused, we were angry and heartbroken by the number of black men and women and others who were being killed daily by acts of police criminality.
August 1st was awesome because it solidified a mission between Columbia Law School and BAC, who we are, which is the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. And we decided that it was time to create a platform in New York City that gave artists a chance to link with leaders in higher education, leaders in government, to talk about what solutions we could make, what roles we could make, and our action steps that we could go into as citizens. So this is why you are here. So thank you for wanting to learn with us. It's going to be an amazing, amazing night.
Tonight's going to be a great night full of discussion, conversation, and performance. And so to all of you, thank you so much for being here. And I want to give a big shout out to everybody watching us on our live stream as well. So hey, y'all.
Just wave at them. Everybody turn back there and just wave at them. They're all going to be here next time.
That's
you guys
right.
are getting it live in the flesh, and they're going to be here with y'all next time.
Yeah.
So thank you guys.
So thank you guys so much for your support.
Also, we want to make this an interactive conversation. So
We call it digital revolution.
You heard what she said. We want you guys to go to our Facebook page and chime in with thoughts that you have, questions that you want to have. If you feel like you want to grab the mic, the microphone is your Facebook. And please say, hey, ask so-and-so what this is. Ask so-and-so, ask Janine Tesori this. And Christian White, our social correspondent, will be that liaison between them and
he will be here to ask those questions for you. So you can go to B-Way Advocacy Coalition on Facebook, B-Way Advocacy Coalition on Twitter, and you can talk to us just as if we're right here talking to you. All right, so y'all ready to get started? Amazing.
So without further ado, we're going to start our conversation with the fishbowl conversation. I'm sorry, before we go to that, I want to bring up Susan Sturm, and she's our cheerleader at Columbia University. She's gonna talk to you for a minute.
So I'm just so excited and thrilled to welcome you all on behalf of the Dean of Columbia Law School and the law school community and the Columbia community. So we are so thrilled about this collaboration that has formed. The vision of BAC as artivists has energized the entire Columbia Law School community, students, faculty, community members, and staff. And so many have expressed themselves the anguish and the sadness about the violence that people have experienced and are really dying to have some way to actually become more actively involved in using our resources to support of changing of the public narrative. And that's what BAC has allowed us to do. The arts provide a vehicle for, in the words of my colleague Kendall Thomas, having a change song, for reimagining the future, for making the future in the flesh, live, now. And law at its best is also about establishing the relationship between the is, the ought, and the what might be. So we now have been invited by BAC to make a commitment to using higher education and the law and the arts community to enable a change of the narrative, to enable us to be hopeful and realistic, to claim our history, and to transform the future. So let's get to it.
So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring up our first topic, and it's going to be a fishbowl conversation. And as we're bringing up these chairs of speakers, you know who you are, you can come on up, and we will start to talk about this. So as they're coming up, I'm going to explain what the fishbowl conversation is. So our objective is to put different types of people into one conversation, and we as an audience and a live stream audience are going to see what do we have in common with our ideas and what are we challenged or not agreeing on, or what do we see. And the goal is to talk about what kind of life do we want to have, what's keeping us from that, and what do we do to create that world. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. Our wonderful panel. We have Ben Wexler, Amy Rogers, Danielle Young. This is hard for me to pronounce. Beulah Ababiaka and Roderick Lawrence. Now, all these people have wonderful, long, extensive bios. I'm gonna put them up online, and I think we should take the time to really dig into this conversation, if that's okay with you guys. Is that all right? Okay, so this is how it's gonna go. I want each of you to tell us your name, your profession, where you are from, and where you live now. Yeah? Ben?
My name is Ben Wexler. I am a composer and a music educator. I'm from New York, and I live in New York.
My name is Amy Rogers Schwartzreich. I am the director and founder of the BFA Musical Theater program at Pace University. I'm from Western Canada, and I live in New York City.
Where in New York City, Amy?
I live at Columbus Circle.
And Ben, where do you live in New York City?
I live in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn.
We're gonna get very specific. Go ahead, Danielle.
Thank you. I'm Danielle Young. I'm the social content producer for TheRoot.com. I am from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I live in Brooklyn. Well, Crown Heights specifically.
Shout out to Crown Heights. I'm also Crown Heights neighbors. We're in here. Beulah?
My name is Beulah Babiaka. I'm a second-year law student. I'm from Richmond, California, which is in the Bay, and I live in Harlem.
Hi, my name is Roderick Lawrence. I'm an actor. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I live in Harlem, New York.
Beautiful. Can we just give a hand up for the wonderful panel here? So, we got 10 minutes here, and the first thing I want to say is I want you to tell us, what kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world? Like, imagine a world where blah, blah, and blah, blah didn't exist. This is your own imagination. What kind of world would that look like? And you can talk freely about that. I'm going to be quiet for like 4 minutes.
Okay, I'll start. It's funny, that question for me currently, I know you said imagine, I know you said all these things, but since we're here and what we're here to do is to make change and do all these things, realistically for me, we are so far away from a world that that I believe that we should be living in and that ideally I would want to move in, that my mind only stays into into what I can realistically hope for. And I've gotten to a point where I can settle. I'm like, I would love to live in a world where, as I've talked to many of my African American friends and colleagues, I'd love to live in a world where I don't have to tell my son, we don't have to tell our daughters that they have to be 100 times better than everyone to compete. That's what I would love to live in a world doing, but I will settle for being okay with my son taking my car and going out for a night and coming back without being pulled over and something terrible happening to him. I will settle for that. I will settle for equality and equal rights for all of us and all of us being treated the same. That's what I would love to have, but I will settle for us being treated equally in the job market, being able to get small business loans, being able to do all of these things that for me seem like basic rights. So that's right now what I feel like is realistic in the world that we live in.
I can jump in. Of course, now with the climate of what we face, every day as people of color, it's obvious that I want to live in a world where we all have lives that actually matter. And it takes me to, I took this life course called Momentum Education, and it thoroughly changed my life. And as I was taking it, it made me realize that I can re-raise myself. I can reteach myself things because, you know, our parents, we love them, God bless, but they don't know. They're just they're just doing it. They're just doing what they learned, what they saw, and so on and so on. So reteaching and relearning things has reignited something in my life that I didn't know that I was missing, and I wanted everybody to be able to have that experience, and it brought along a personal mattering to me that was so beautiful and so eye-opening and so just an experience that we all deserve. So, and it translates now into where we are now, you know, where we feel essentially as if we don't matter. And I'm sitting here as a testimony to my own impossibilities because I didn't see this in my life. I am a little country girl from North Carolina. I didn't know, you know, I would be on a stage being able to speak to people who want to listen to me. And that before mattering, that was something that was so impossible. So it's just something that I wish this world could show everybody, you know, down to people who are disabled, people who aren't like a standard of beauty that we all look at in the media or whatever, that they matter as well. That their dreams, their things that they think and they wish and they want that they don't think they can have, they could actually have that. So I guess mine would be a mattering conversation.
For time's sake, the rest of you guys have a minute to say what you think.
I would love to live in a world in which it's the expectation that we lead with empathy, and that is taught in schools at an early age. And I think that is, as an arts educator, about valuing and requiring arts education at an early age. And I would love to live in a world in which we're taught to listen that early, listen to music actively in a way that I think mimics and mirrors how we listen to other people. And so in some of my classes, I will dissect a studio session from the 70s, and I'll dissect a studio session from 2015, and we'll listen to the depth of the recording that went on and the solo playing that went on in each individual instrument and how they listened to each other. And then we'll dissect 2015, which is electronic. It's about feeling. It's about individual experience. I feel like there's a lot of individual processing that goes on with people. And I would love to live in a world in which we listen deeply to music and then get the harmonic cues from that and listen to the humanity of those players and the depth of their craft in a way that we listen to the depth of a single human being. So that's sort of my imagined world.
So, to paraphrase Bob Marley, I want a world where isms and schisms are no longer a problem. A world that I can freely and comfortably move about in, and that the people that I care about and that I love from backgrounds across the spectrum can also freely move about that world. As a law student, I think a way I can see that changing and happening in my lifetime is a better understanding of the ways judicial interpretation and the laws in general impact everyday life for just regular people as you navigate space. And so I think that that's something that we can contribute to changing immediately that can help minimize those isms and schisms.
I have a almost 21-month-old boy, and I feel like this question, I'm answering this question from his eyes now. I think I would answer it differently 20 months ago. But I would like him to be in a world where he and all of his friends and peers and family feel seen and feel heard and feel respected. And I was going to say empathy as well. How, I don't know, I have this like this Western Canadian part of me that has this like idyllic socialist wonderland, and then this New Yorker, and it like often collides. But I think a world where people feel safe and seen and heard and respected.
Can you identify what you think is keeping your son from that now? Like, can you identify what's happening that that makes his peers not hear him in the same way or him not see his peers in the same way?
I think I mean, he's too young for that to happen to him yet, but I'm watching the community around him. And I think that there is an epidemic of white people not understanding their privilege enough to know what to do with it. And I think that understanding that and using it in a way that can impact change is like, it would just wake people up if they could actually look in the mirror and be like, I have all of this shit just because of this reason. You know, like, what am I gonna do with it? And I feel like, you know, I live on the Upper West Side, I have all these people that look just like us, and we're looking at schools for him, and it like makes you want to vomit, and because it's just privilege all over the place, upon privilege, and I think if people knew what to do with it and how that could be tremendously impactful, it would be a big difference for him.
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Amy. With 5 minutes left, can we talk about how we go about creating the world that we just talked about being in? Beulah, how do you go about creating that Bob Marley idea of no isms? Like, how do you personally go about making that a possibility?
Well, I think those isms and schisms have been codified in a way that I wasn't aware of until school. There is so much legal baggage that we have that is preventing the type of world that I want to see, that it has to change. And so that can change from judicial interpretation, like now that we don't have one of our dearly departed on the bench, the balance could change if the Supreme Court nomination ever happens. So that's one way that the balance can shift, because they're deciding cases that can undo some of this baggage or can further that. And then there are, I'm sure a lot of people have seen The 13th by Ava DuVernay or read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. That's a wonderful starting point for your legal analysis on the ways that we are either experiencing the systematic oppression of the legal system or we're benefiting from the privileges of it, depending on where you stand. And so those are ways that you can interact with the way the laws are limiting you or furthering your success, in ways that you can understand how we're supposed to change that, whether that's putting pressure on your local congressman or your state representative about building more prisons when we don't have enough money for schools, or whether that's writing a letter to whomever. These are things that you can do even though they seem sort of remote from reality, that can accompany the grassroots organizing and social justice work that is bringing about the sort of paradigmatic shift we need in America for these changes to take place.
Thank you, Beulah. We have a tweet from someone. We want to see what they have to say.
Hey guys, David Andre said, I'd like to live in a world where I don't have to be reminded of my blackness every day. I'm proud of it, but that's not all I am.
That's a great thing, man. I think I talk about race almost every day now that I'm an adult. When I was a kid growing up in Texas, I don't think I even realized the bubble that I was in. And I grew up in Texas. Y'all can imagine what was going on in Texas. But you know, as you get older, you learn and you go, what the heck? What world do I live in? So yeah, I agree with you, man. Do you have something to say? What kind of world, what do you do to create the kind of world you want to live in? And then we'll close here.
Well, I think it touches on what you spoke about, empathy. For me as an actor, I speak on empathy often. I think that it's the most important asset as an actor, empathy and listening. And what I tell people is, to get where we need to be, we need to restore the empathy in a country where apathy is the norm. And you know, not only do you just not care about things that have nothing to do with you, as like every day we just walk by, you know, they're just like, oh well, that I'm respectful to the cops. And the funny thing is that everyone is guilty of it. Our people are guilty of it. Everyone. We have stars coming out. Shaq the other day said that he doesn't have problems when the cops pull him over because he's respectful. You know, you know, it just all the time. I have people who will hit me up and they'll be like, I really want to help. I really want to help. How do I do it? I was speaking with a white cop 2 days ago, didn't know he was a cop, met him at a bar. He's a very nice guy. He's from the south side of Chicago. Genuinely a brilliant guy, very nice, wanted to do whatever. made a very ignorant comment at some point and then apologized for it profusely. That is not enough. You know, like it just, we accept these apologies, and after these apologies, you go on, whoever it may be, feeling that they did their part. They're like, I apologize for being ignorant today. And, you know, we need to delve into, you know, what those issues are, like empathy. Just like we need to understand and care to open our minds to figuring out why this is happening to people and how you would feel if it happened to you. And then that empathy will pull you out of your apathy and get you to do something about it. And that's what I think.
Just to chime on that, one thing that is important is educating our white, brown, blue, all of the communities to like understand and feel comfortable having a conversation. So I'm very grateful for a platform like this where we feel like we can just say what we have to say, be honest about it. Like you said, Amy, thank you. But like, if these conversations don't exist, then they never get a chance to learn, and they never get the permission to even participate. And, you know, and this is something that everyone needs to participate in. So I appreciate that. We all need to join in. Thank you guys for this awesome panel. We're moving on. You can leave the mics in your seat. So our next conversation is talking about being politically engaged and what that looks like. What does it mean to be an active member? And on this panel, we have Farah Tanis, Frank Roberts, Rebecca Rad, and Peyton Head. You can give them a round of applause as they make their way up. Now, this is a very, very powerful panel we have up here. Frank Roberts was a leader in our last conversation. Thanks again for being here. He is a political organizer on the front lines of the Black Lives Matter movement. Farah Tanis here on the end here is lead faculty in the Institute for Gender and Cultural Competence. She's also the co-founder and executive director of Black Women's Blueprint. Peyton, one second, my man. Peyton Head, after igniting a national movement for inclusion, former Mizzou student body president. Peyton Head speaks on race relations, contemporary social movements, college activism, and the LGBTQ equality. Rebecca Rad hails from Brazil by ways of Florida and Michigan. She's an actor, director, teacher, activist, and she's currently a public artist with me in residence with the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, where she works with 30 LGBTQ homeless youth to get them engaged in finding their own artistic and political voice. So thank you guys for being here. So this whole evening is talking about political participation. What does that mean? You know, there's so many things we can do in that scheme. We can vote, we can protest, we can picket, we can write letters to our Congress. But it's important to let people know that once you're born, you should have the right to be a full member of society. You should. What does it mean to be a full member of society? What does that even mean? We can just talk about that.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you. It's a Sunday night. You guys could have been many other places. The fact that you're here, can you please give yourselves a round of applause? Such a pleasure to hold space with you. So I know that the English word human actually comes from the Latin word the English word human comes from the Latin word humando. That's a different, which means burial. But the English word community actually comes from the Latin word communitas, which means what? That which they share in common. And so for me, the way you build the community is by building what you have in common. And what the 19-year-old white trans sister in Kentucky and the 54-year-old straight black man in Flatbush have in common is a shared desire to be free, a shared desire to be liberated from the prisons which kind of confine all of us. So for me, building community begins with finding out what unites us, what our common values are. Building community also is about, for me, resisting what the writer Chimamanda Adichie refers to as the danger of a single story, right? That particularly in the context of the black community, we're so used to telling the story of black struggle and black progress through a single narrative, a narrative which is usually male, usually straight, usually Christian. And so part of what the work, I think, is in this new moment about building community is we build community the same way we build the jazz ensemble, which is by letting everyone have a space at the microphone.
I think that was very wonderfully said. To me, and I loved your definition of what community is and building community. I think for me, being part of a community, and you talked about shared values. I think about shared customs. I think about shared politics, but I also think about shared differences, right? So we can build community across differences. We can build communities that are local and global. And to me, a community is really one where, one in which we each respect each other's basic human rights, and we ensure that each other's basic human rights are respected. And whether that is through voting, whether that is through organizing, or through art and analysis and writing and acting and all of those wonderful things that we do, or through protesting, that we can reach across, the divides, the chasms, but really in a way that promotes not only personal security. And when I say basic human rights, I think about, conventions, I think about, laws and policies, against racial discrimination, against torture, laws that promote the rights of children, the rights of women. It's our responsibility to make sure that, each of us, that these laws, that our practices embody these policies, that the way we live in a way that respect each other, that value each other's humanity by ensuring each other's human rights, whether it is, and that's at every level, as I spoke about, whether it's through human rights treaties, whether it's through policy work at the federal level, at the state level, but also at the community level, even within our homes. I think our homes, our families, are small communities as well. And community is what you make it, is another thing that I want to say. It's ever shifting for many of us. For some of us who don't feel we belong in a particular kind of community because of who we are, how we identify, or our personal beliefs, how we show up, we also create community. And I think at the root of that, and at the root of the glue that keeps our communities together, whatever community it is that we choose, is that basic respect and that basic assurance, and that I have your back, you have my back, and I'm gonna ensure your rights and you're gonna ensure mine. And that should be an expectation. And that for me is community. What I have to say about that.
I like that you said at the base of your participation is respect. The first thing you need to do to participate politically is show respect. Thank you. That was nice. Peyton.
I think that, going one step above respect is the celebration of our differences and the fact that they all make us stronger. Just at my time, like at the University of Missouri, I remember telling students, it's one thing to open up a book and read about different people's identities and read about where they come from, but it's another thing to go to an event that celebrates their culture or celebrates who they are. And I think that when we find that basic level of humanity, something that all of us embark on usually, which is some kind of celebration of some sort, we can truly have a better community and a better world. Because I think that the basic respect level is sometimes too much to ask for. But I think that respect a lot of times can come from people recognizing and putting themselves in spaces where they can realize that at our very core, we're human beings, as opposed to what we look like on the outside or what our preference may be or whatever our gender expression or identity or whatever it may be. We're human at the end of the day, and if we can learn to love each other and if we can learn to learn about each other, we can celebrate those identities. And I think that that's one of the biggest ways we can move our political agendas forward.
Thank you, man. The next question is, why is education so critical in developing the capacity for people to express themselves politically? Why is education so important?
Well, we can talk about politics in this huge way, right? Like, it's kind of scary to think about the system that is politics. But we have to remember that politics is also a very personal thing, and it starts with you. everything you do is political. What you wear, who your friends are, what kind of art you're supporting, where you live. Do you know your local business owners? Do you know your neighbors? Who are you inviting to dinner at your house? All of these things are political acts. So to participate, you don't have to be, doing these enormous, huge things. It can be as small as supporting your local business. It can be as small as inviting the people in your building for a community dinner. Fostering community begins with knowing your neighbors. It begins with knowing who's next to you. And that is some of the best education you can get, because you can read books, you can spout like intellectual things, but unless you can talk to your neighbor about your needs and beliefs and the things you're fighting for together, then you're not actually being effectively political.
Let me say this. In my personal hometown and neighborhood, there's a group of people in Oak Cliff. I love my home, but I know that the education, I wasn't taught, about politics. I wasn't taught about that. I was taught about music, church, brotherhood, but I wasn't taught politics. And it wasn't until I got older and angry and trying to figure out my place in the world as an educated, smart, capable black man, still getting arrested for crap on the streets. So how can we bring education to communities that need it the most, who aren't at Columbia University Law School right now?
And I'm so glad you said that. I think it's a privilege for most of us, right? It's a privilege that we get to be at Columbia. It's a privilege that we get to go to NYU. And for most of us, we don't have access. And for those of us from marginalized communities in particular, or those of us who are immigrants, those of us who have low literacy rates, that's not something we have access to. And so one of the things you said that's extremely important is that, there is this sort of, some people would call this a conspiracy theory, but I think for most of us, we understand this to be true, that there is an intentional sort of neglect, an intentional rewriting of history, an intentional removal of political education in our public schools, in our junior high schools, and even on some of our campuses. It's not mandatory to teach political education. It's not mandatory to teach basic rights. It's not mandatory to teach, law, legal rights, the basics. And it's also not a priority to teach the history of, our rights, the history of our education system. That historical context is so extremely critical. And without knowing it, many of us as parents, many of us even as teachers that I've encountered in the public school system, aren't really able to push for curricula, or even if there isn't curricula, to develop other systems and other ways of educating their educating students and educating our children, not only about the history of Jim Crow, the lynching era, with the history of our voting rights and how we had to fight for it, about Fannie Lou Hamer, about there are certain things that are talked about when we think about Martin Luther King, but there isn't much talked about around the real fight for voting rights, how people died to be able to vote, and how lynching was used as a tool to suppress voting, how, the hoses were turned on us and the dogs, were turned on us. And so I think it's extremely important not to just teach the current sort of like basic, structures, but also the historical context, because I think that's what will push us. That's what will make us realize that just how important it is to be active and to not sit on the sidelines and to go vote on Tuesday.
Amen. Frank?
Yeah, sure. So go vote on Tuesday for sure. Or participate in other ways if you choose not to vote, right? So teaching is a form of community organizing, right? There's this myth, particularly about the civil rights movement, that the civil rights movement was only about organizing people into the streets, but it was also about organizing people into settings just like this. Classrooms, auditoriums. You think about the teaching tradition of the Mississippi Freedom Schools, led by Fannie Lou Hamer. That was about actually young people, right? And people who were actually locked out of institutionalized spaces coming together to actually learn learning as a radical political act. There really, and what the civil rights movement teaches us really is that there are 5 ways to think about political participation. You first have the the electoral route, which is about voting, right? So right now we have a neo-fascist lunatic on one hand and a neoliberal liar on the other hand, right? And so whichever one you vote for, if you are a 17-year-old poor black boy in Flatbush or Ferguson, I'm not sure that either candidate is going to reduce your chances of being shot by the police with impunity. But electoral politics is one form of participation, right? Then you have economic participation, which was really the Montgomery boycott model, which is about economic divestment, learning how to, and which was the Mizzou model, right? Learning how to say, if you don't do X, Y, Z, we are going to divest and withdraw funds, and that's going to actually have leverage in the system. Number 3, you have the organizational model, which is about things like this, organizing teach-ins. And then you have the direct action model, which is about getting people into the streets. Then you have what you talked about, which is the personal as political. Who you choose to love is a radical political act. So I think part of what we need to do is do the work of educating folks on the various forms of political participation, that it's not just electoral, but it's those other things as well.
You have 3 more minutes on this panel. I was going to give it to you, Peyton, if you have anything. Sure. Yeah, man.
So this is about education, right?
Education, yes, yeah. Please. Why is education so important for like allowing people to even articulate their thoughts politically?
Yeah, I think education is like Nelson Mandela said, you know, one of the most powerful weapons in which you can use to change the world. And I think that when we start to redefine what that looks like, when we start to redefine what education looks like, we can go beyond just the books and we can go beyond just the traditional like teaching in the classroom and realize that education looks so different, you know, in so many different ways. You know, just stepping out of your house and maybe walking to a different community and talking to people is a form of education. And so for me particularly, like learning about politics and using it as a tool to be able to, you know, break down a system of oppression from the inside was something that I had to get educated on at the University of Missouri. I looked into the history, I read the books, I went to the university archives and, you know, read that there were only, you know, 2 black student body presidents to come before me since 1911 and realized what that would look like for campus if I were to win and what kind of power I would have with the administration to, you know, call out some of the issues with that platform that I had. And so I think that the education can be a crucial part of the organizing piece because you can realize exactly, a lot of times you're not even taught how oppressed you are. That's the biggest issue. You don't know what the issues are. You have this inherent feeling, you know, that I'm not equal, that, you know, that the system is rigged against me, but you don't have the words to be able to articulate to the people who matter, who have the power to change it, you know, and the statistics and, you know, how higher education works, best practices and tenure and all, you know, all of the different jargon and all of the different language. That's what I had to learn in order to be able to, you know, help bring down, you know, a system president and a chancellor. Because I couldn't have done it just a little undergrad, not knowing anything about how the actual like educational bureaucracy worked. You know, I didn't know who I was supposed to go to, who I was supposed to talk to, but I realized that part of education is knowing who are the key power players. It was black graduate students studying higher education leadership and policy analysis who worked with undergrads and told us this is the way in which you can go about taking down a system or changing the system. You know, it was certain things that were told to me that said, you know, if you were to say this in front of the Board of Curators and the Board of Governors or send this out to the governor, that kind of education is what changed a lot at the University of Missouri, and it eventually led to $10 million being put into efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I think that the education is so important, but we have to get out of this mindset that, you know, it's just sitting in the classroom. Because a lot of times it's just talking to people, it's identifying key power players and realizing that you don't have all the answers, but if you get a group of people who are in different areas who do, and you build that coalition, you can accomplish anything that you want to accomplish.
I agree with that a whole bunch, man. Thank you guys, this awesome panel. Yeah. Thank you guys, thank you.
How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Amber. I'm so glad to see all of you beautiful people out here tonight. Something that Rebecca said spoke to me, and it was that to do something, to be politically active and involved is something as tiny as getting to know your neighbors. So right now we're gonna have a social media moment. I want you to take out your cellular devices. I know everyone has one. I want you to look to your left, look to your right, look across the aisle, find someone you don't know, and go meet your neighbor. Let's do it, go. Snap a selfie, hashtag Artivism, post on our Facebook, our Instagram. Let's do it, guys. We're doing it, live streaming, we're doing it. Meet them, find out where they live, find out something you have in common. Post your pictures. Yes, I see selfies happening. We're changing the world. Is enough time? Let's take one more minute. I love it. People making friends, neighbors meeting neighbors. Social media moment. Meet your neighbor. Take a selfie. Post it. Hashtag Artivism. Hashtag BAC. Hashtag Artivism. Hashtag BAC. Hashtag. Hashtag. All right, we're wrapping it up. Hashtag take a seat. Hashtag say goodbye. Hashtag take a seat. Hashtag it's all over. Hashtag thank you. Hashtag get him, Malika. 30 more seconds. This is beautiful. Get their phone numbers. Go to brunch, endless mimosas. Make it a moment. 15 more seconds. Yes, that's a good selfie, I could tell. Beautiful. And we're wrapping it up in 10 seconds. Take your seats, please, people. Thank you so much. Let's give ourselves a round of applause for that fabulous social media moment. I hope you met a friend. Your future boo could be here. I don't know. I just made a love connection. Thank me later. All right, we're moving on, guys. Next in our program is the fabulous L. Stephen Taylor. He's a performer. Yes, we can clap. He's a performer and a spoken word artist who can currently be seen in Broadway's The Lion King, as well as on your TV screens. His stage credits include Smokey Joe's Cafe, A Chorus Line, and Miss Saigon. On TV, he's been seen in Last of the Ninth, Person of Interest, and Madam Secretary. Please look for his upcoming video series called Perspective, which explores issues of social injustice through spoken word. Please help me welcome Mr. L. Stephen Taylor.
Here we are again, in the age of enlightenment, where citizens of America can two-term a black president. Yet reticence still takes hold of my would-be words. My nerve struggles to find footing that my heart be heard. 2016. But the scene seems to resemble that of the early 19s, dreams that King had before me and for us, now lost to the wind like an open palm full of fairy dust. And I know what you're thinking, not another one of them. Not another black guy with another black poem. Throw in the towel, it's foul what's happening, but what more can you do, right? I mean, you saw my posts on Facebook, you even paused to hit like, and for you that may cause a few moments of social backlash, and for you that may even feel like the equivalent of having your backlash, but blacks last is still the function in which this country seems to be operating, strange fruit still swaying, decaying on the branches of broken promises. It's ominous, this state of unrest that we once again find ourselves in. Groundhog Day, no end. Now, how do I explain all that to him, my son? you look like me. Yes, your skin is a little lighter, your eyes a little brighter, but you look just like me. And I know you're just a teen, life experience is green, but I need you to understand what it means to look like me. See, because you look like me, when you walk out our front door, you are 2.5 times more likely than some of your friends to never see that door again. When you walk down the street, you do not have the luxury of putting up your hoodie, no matter how cold it is, kid, because you look like me. You've been perceived as a threat since you took your first breath, and the strength of the safety net that we let you rest in is in question because now you look too much like me. But because you look like me, that also means that you are strong, that you come from long lines of greatness, like the billions of roots that break through this earth, so too shall you rise like branches that hold court with the sky, because you look like me. And because you look like me, that means you share genes with kings and queens, your bloodline overflowing with the fierceness of the night and the bright sting of the morning. You look like me. And there are people who look like us who have done great things in this world, and their essence and presence swirl around you now, ready to disavow anyone who tells you that you are anything but amazing, because you look like me. And imagine this. He made all of us in his image. So how great must you be that he made me look like him and made you look like me?
Again, let's give it up for Mr. L. Stephen Taylor and his son, Stephen Taylor Jr. That was beautiful. Hi, my name is Cameron J. Ross. I am a proud member of BAC. And I just want to take another moment to thank you guys for being here and accepting the invitation. So give it up again for yourselves for being here. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker by the name of Reverend Vivian Nixon. The Reverend Vivian Nixon is Executive Director of College and Community Fellowship, CCF, an organization committed to removing individual and structural barriers to higher education for women with criminal record histories and their families. As a formerly incarcerated woman and prior CCF program participant, Reverend Nixon is uniquely positioned to lead the charge to help justice-involved women and their families have a better future. While incarcerated, Reverend Nixon spent time as a peer educator for the Adult Basic Education Program at the Albion State Correctional Facility in New York. Following her release, she was ordained by the African Methodist Episcopal Church, AMEC, and currently serves as the Associate Minister at Mount Zion AMEC in New York City. She is a Columbia University Community Scholar and a recipient of the John Jay Medal for Justice. She's also a part of the Ascend Fellowship at the Aspen Institute and the Soros Justice Fellowship and the Petra Foundation Fellowship. She is a co-founder of the Education from Inside Out Coalition, which is, the acronym is EIO, a collaborative effort to increase success in higher education for justice-involved students. And she serves on the advisory board of Just Leadership USA. This sister has done a lot, and she is still doing a lot. So she's going to come up here and she's going to talk about changing the context in which politics happens, and where do transformative politics happen, and who's a part of that conversation, how are we able to change that stuff. So it is my pleasure, and can we all give it up for the wonderful Reverend Vivian Nixon. Absolutely. You got a music fan here? Sister, thank you.
Hello. I am Vivian Nixon, as you've heard, and they sent me the run of show this morning, and I saw all the things that were going to happen tonight, and then I looked for my name, and it said next to my name, speech. I don't give speeches, so I mean, I guess the fact that I am talking, it is technically speech. But I really just want to have a conversation about the work and how I think the work is all connected and how I think political engagement is really important at this critical time in our nation's history. And how do we make that happen? What are the different ways that we can all participate? I want to start just by saying you don't have to be elected to be government. We all govern our society in different ways. So, you know, politics happens, as we've heard on the previous two panels, in many, many ways, from the collective to the individual. But there are different types of politics that we all participate in. And for the most part, we participate in transactional politics, right? And I'm going to start out with an example from history, because we're in this crucial moment where we really are examining where we stand as a society as it pertains to inclusion and equity, especially racial equity. I'm sure that many of you have seen 13th, the recent documentary. So a series of transactions happened from the very founding of this nation that brought us to various points. And what I want to get you to understand in the next 4 minutes, because then I want to bring some other voices into the space from a group that I work with. But the series of transactions has been seen by many as transformational politics, when really it just was a series of transactions that led to slight changes in the way we do things. So I'm going to start with slavery, which was a founding idea of this nation, that in order to take this new world that had been entered and build it into something that would benefit the founding fathers, labor would be needed. And it was decided or contrived that that labor would come from imported people of color. We were taught, I was taught, I don't know, I'm 58 years old, so maybe the curriculum is different now. But I remember being in school and being taught that there were slaves, and then Lincoln freed them, and now there are no longer slaves. Boom, drop the mic. That was my African American history lesson. But the truth is that, you know, Lincoln's actions in freeing the slaves or in writing the Emancipation Proclamation had very little to do with the sincere desire for African Americans to be equal citizens in this country, right? There was a series of things that were going on. I mean, Lincoln said in several of his debates with Stephen Douglas, like, I have no desire for African Americans, for slaves to have equal rights. I just think that slavery itself is not moral. And then he went on into this period where he felt like the right thing to do was colonize the slaves, send them to Liberia. That will solve all our problems. And then the initial Emancipation Proclamation did not really free anybody, because he declared freedom for only those slaves who were in the southern states that the Union no longer had control over. It was when more than 100,000 slaves made their way to the battle lines and put their lives on the line by joining the fight with the Union, that Lincoln felt these slaves who are willing to put their lives on the line are an asset. They can help the Union win this fight. And so that's what the Emancipation Proclamation was all about. It was not about equality for African Americans. It was a very calculated political and military move. So because it was transactional leadership, transactional politics, and not transformational politics, it led to a series of other transactions. You know, the transaction by which we created laws that allowed for convict leasing, that allowed for people to be virtually put back into slavery because of sharecropper laws where they were indebted to plantation owners for the rest of their lives. We allowed people to just linger in ghettos, working poor, low-wage jobs during the industrialization period. And when those jobs went away, we criminalized so much behavior that we created a system of mass incarceration. Those were all political transactions. So what does transformational politics look like? I want to go back to one of the things a former panelist said right on this stage, that the way to get to transformational politics is to understand yourself as part of the body politic. I like to say that systems are created by people, and therefore systems kind of have a life of their own, right? And when someone tries to come along and destroy a system, the system will fight and struggle to survive. We want our country back, right? Everything that lives will struggle to survive. So with that, I want to bring into the space the voices of some women I work with. At College and Community Fellowship, we work with women coming out of prison, helping them get college degrees, but also engaging them in the public dialogue around issues of mass incarceration, police violence, domestic violence, and other types of oppressive systems that disparately impact people of color. And our Theater for Social Change is a mechanism by which we educate policymakers, students, people in prison, and the general community about the stories that are behind the transactional politics that happen every day in America. And what we have found is that when people hear the stories and see the faces and experience the lives, they're more willing to think about themselves as part of the body politic that can make politics transformational and not just transactional. So, you know, a lot of times, someone else said on the panel too, I'm sorry, I can't remember everyone's name, but someone else said, you know, you don't have to do a big thing. Right? I think it was the same person who said it's an individual thing. You don't have to do a big thing. The smallest thing can be a political action. So I'm going to do a short monologue. It was written by a friend of mine, Cheryl Wilkins, about a small political act that later led to a lifetime of political activity, and she's one of the most engaged citizens that I know. People who know me think that my first act of advocacy, my first act of championing the rights of women in prison, was advocating for the return of Pell Grants. Because in 1994, through the Clinton crime bill, Pell Grants were taken away from incarcerated students. But that was not my first political act. My first political act was advocating for an extra roll of toilet paper. You see, in prison, women are allotted the same amount of toilet paper per month as the men. Yeah. That's ridiculous. And so we know it was a man who made that decision. Cheryl Wilkins. I'm going to close with one of my own monologues because I think it speaks to the fact that I believe that everything that lives will always struggle to survive no matter what. I am horrible with plants. I buy plants and they look really good for a couple of days. And then I'll go on a business trip, forget to water the plants before I leave, and I'll come back, and the plant will literally be on its last legs. Leaves falling off, it's turning brown around the edges. And this happened to me over and over and over again. And then one day I came home, and I looked at the plant sitting in the corner. It was a dark corner. And the plant was kind of leaning and looking sad and pitiful. And I have to admit, my response to dying plants was to throw them away. But this time, I didn't throw it away. I looked at the plant and I said, what is up with this plant? Because I had watered it before I left. The plant was leaning in a certain direction. And I realized that what the plant was doing was leaning toward the window. It was leaning toward the sun. It was struggling to survive. It was like, I need light. I'm going toward the light. And so I picked off the brown leaves and I straightened up the plant and I noticed that there was still moisture in the roots and I began to nurture the plant. And it grew. We talk about the American dream as if it is a living thing, and it is. But it is not an American dream, it is many American dreams, because we don't all dream the same. My dream, when I was young, was to be an actress. I studied hard, I participated in community theater. And when I got accepted to college, I decided to major in theater, to the chagrin of my mother, who thought I should be a lawyer. So on the paperwork that we mailed to Oswego State University, I checked off political science. And as soon as I got on campus, I changed it back to theater. That first year was an amazing year for me. I loved every minute of it. I loved studying theater. I auditioned for the role of Frederick Douglass's wife, Anna, in Splendid Era, and got the part as a freshman, and I was just so thrilled and so excited. And then December came, and I went home, and my mother looked at my transcript and said the following words right to my face: "You are not Farrah Fawcett. You will never be an actress. You can't make any money doing that. You either change your major next semester, or I do not pay another dime for your education." On that day, I began to feel like a plant left in the corner of a dark room. I could feel my hopes and my dreams just draining from me. And I returned to school and changed my major to political science. And I flunked out. And I came out to a minimum wage job that I hated. And for years I struggled, a downward spiral where I felt like that plant, just looking for any tiny source of light or water so that I could live. And then, 16 years later, I walked out of a prison door and I found a community at College and Community Fellowship that helped me understand that I am the body politic, and that what I want, what I believe can be changed with my own power. That I can change the society where an African American mother that grew up in the 30s and 40s wouldn't have to be so afraid that I couldn't make a living because I didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes as an actress. That I could infiltrate the systems of oppression that say you can't be what you want to be because of your skin color. And with that education, with that empowerment, with that political engagement, I began to feel like that plant. I looked up and I saw a light and I began to grow. We are in a period of American history where many of us are discouraged. Many of us don't think there's a good choice. We are the good choice. We are the good choice. Because everyone in this room has the power to make a decision. What you dream for this country, the first question that was asked, what kind of society do you want to live in? If you see that dream shriveling and dying like a plant in a corner of a dark room, it is only you who can pluck away the dead leaves and nurture the healthy root to make America the type of society you want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Nixon. Please give her another round of applause. Our next artivist is Miss Danae Benton. Please give her a round of applause. Why not? Danae is honored to be making her Broadway debut as Natasha in Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. Other credits include Nabulungi in the West End and U.S. National Tour of the Book of Mormon, and she can currently be seen in season 2 of Lifetime's hit TV series Unreal as Ruby. Danae is a 2014 graduate of Carnegie Mellon University with a BFA in musical theater. Please help me welcome Danae Benton.
I'm just going to say a few words to explain my song choice. I had so many questions, and then I feel like Reverend Nixon just answered all of them. But I'll say what I prepared. When I was thinking of a song choice, I was like, okay, political participation, I should sing like Make Them Hear You or Let Freedom Ring or something. And I was like, I don't really feel that way right now. I watched the documentary 13th that everyone's talking about. And it brought up similar feelings in college when I saw this documentary called The Black Power Mixtape for the first time. And it was my first time really seeing answers to these sort of questions where I was like, well, why do all my white friends live in a rich neighborhood and all my black friends live in a poor neighborhood, and all these questions. And that was the first time me really understanding the system. And instead of feeling like fight the power after, I just really felt rejected and a little bamboozled and humiliated, and just, I felt betrayed. And it was an interesting feeling to deal with, and what it means to politically participate when you're feeling like that. And when I watched the 13th, there was this quote where someone said, there's never been a time in American history where the American government has not been strategically finding new ways to control the black population and black bodies. And that hit me hard, because I was like, how am I supposed to want to deal with something? It's like being in a codependent, abusive relationship where I'm like, do I just get the point at some point where they don't want me here, so bye? But then it's like, but my blood and my people built this place. So like, how do I claim what's mine? And I was reading this article in the Washington Post, and it was talking about the importance of allowing black grief and black anger to exist. And it was talking about how after the terrorist attack at the church in Charleston, a child of one of the mothers who had been killed was immediately asked before the funeral service if they forgave the man who killed her. And especially with blackness and Christianity and all these things, there's this forgiveness that has to happen right away before anyone even asks for an apology. And it says, the almost reflexive demand of forgiveness, especially for those dealing with death by racism, is about protecting whiteness and America as a whole. This is yet another burden for Black America. After 9/11, there was no talk about forgiving al-Qaeda, Saddam Hussein, or Osama bin Laden. America declared war and rushed protective measures into place to prevent future attacks. Ta-Nehisi Coates on Twitter said, "Can't remember any campaign to love and forgive in the wake of ISIS beheadings. No one expects Jewish people to forgive Nazis or contemporary anti-Semitic acts, but Black people are held to an impossibly higher standard. When Black redemption of white America is prioritized over justice and accountability, there is no chance of truth and reconciliation. It trivializes real Black suffering, grief, and heavy lifting required for any possibility of societal progress." So this song, it was interesting. It's sort of, it sounds like it's about a personal relationship, but it was sort of my way of allowing myself to sit in some of the rejection and some of the anger and be like, I don't know if I want to forgive you yet. You haven't apologized. And maybe I'll live in that for a little bit and see if it teaches me anything. Something always brings me back to you. It never takes too long. No matter what I say or do, I still feel you here till the moment I'm gone. You hold me without touch. You keep me without chains. I never wanted anything so much than to drown in your love and not feel your rain. Set me free, leave me be. I don't want to fall another moment into your gravity. Here I am, and I stand so tall, just the way I'm supposed to be. But you're on to me and all over me. Oh, you loved me 'cause I'm fragile, when I thought that I was strong. But you touched me for a little while, and all my fragile strength is gone. Set me free, leave me be. I don't want to fall another moment into your gravity. Here I am, and I stand so tall, just the way I'm supposed to be. But you're on to me and all over me. I live here on my knees as I try to make you see that you're everything I think I need here on the ground. But you're neither friend nor foe, though I can't seem to let you go. The one thing that I still know is that you're keeping me down. Keeping me down, yeah, 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 yeah. You're on to me, and all over. Something always brings me back to you. It never takes too long. Thank you.
A round of applause for Miss Danae Benton and her accompanist, Mr. Brian Whitted, one of the world's most fabulous musicians. Please give him a round of applause. From Chicago, the musical, to Bette Midler, he's done it all, people. It's fabulous. I wanted to take a moment to direct your attention to the chalkboards. I figure that some of you are wondering what is going on. So this is a part of Words on White. It's an arts campaign that was started by Zaylin Livingston, Robert Newman, and Garmin Freeman. It began as a one-night-only event at Crane Theater in New York City. It aimed to engage audiences in hard conversations about police criminality in the wake of the deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castillo by resurrecting texts from civil rights leaders of the past. In that event, they introduced their first community canvas, and it has since become a staple, giving artists and audiences the opportunity to respond to the evening on the canvas using pen, charcoal, whatever. So at the end of the evening, we're going to raise these two chalkboards, and there's room on the two behind them. So if you can come up, grab a piece of chalk, and write any words, any phrases, anything that came to mind as a response to the evening you've experienced. Can I get a yes, we're gonna do that? Yes, I see Malika is excited about chalk. Yes, Malika, that is for you. Brittany, you ready?
Yeah.
Our next panel discussion, here we go.
So our next panel, we're bringing artists embedded into this conversation. They've been in all these conversations, but now we're gonna really focus on our role as artists in this fight here. I think you have another paper of mine, Amber. So we're gonna bring up Jeanine Tesori, Celia Keenan-Bolger, Ronald Hampton, and my love, Karine Plantadil. I need the paper that she has. So, Jeanine Tesori won the Tony Award for Best Original Score with Lisa Krohn for the musical of Fun Home, which also won the 2015 Tony for Best Musical. She is awesome, and her bio is long because she is the shit. Oh, no. No. Okay, also, Ronald Hampton retired from the DC Metropolitan Police Department after 23 years of service as community relations officer. He is reputed for his outstanding work with the citizens of the 3rd District in DC in crime prevention and community participation, along with many other things. But this is really cool, guys. He is currently the executive director of the National Black Police Association. Karine has been a Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhism for 23 years, a practice dedicated to peace in the world through the realization of each person's happiness. The SGI promotes culture, peace, and education centered on respect for the dignity of life. She has appeared on Broadway as Coffin and After Midnight, Kate in Come Fly Away, Brenda and Jessica in Moving Out, Cheetah and Lioness, on and on and on and on and on. Celia Keenan-Bolger, our last panelist, is on Broadway right now in a show that I saw, which was awesome. The Cherry Orchard, The Glass Menagerie. She had a Tony nomination for that, a Drama Desk Award, and the Dorothy Loudon Award? Dorothy Loudon. Dorothy Loudon Award, all right. Peter and the Starcatcher, Tony Award nom, again, long bio because our panelists are dope and they know that this is an important night, so they came out here. Can you give them a round of applause just for being here, first of all? So I'm gonna take my learning position down here and give you guys the floor. So thank you guys again for coming. Each of you answered a call or an email, got on the phone with you and talked to you guys about this. You were here from the very beginning. Jeanine, thank you so much for helping us push this out. Thank you guys. So this discussion is, how do we work together? How do we use each other to promote participation? How do we make change by working together? So let's talk about that. Our roles now and how we can help each other in the fight for social change, working together. Anybody?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me to participate. And let me bring you up to date. I'm no longer the executive director of the National Black Police Association. I stepped down in 2010, and I work with a group of brothers and sisters in law enforcement and corrections in New York and in the New England area called Blacks in Law Enforcement of America. And I'm also do work with the Institute of the Black World 21st Century, who, by the way, are having the State of the Black World Conference in Newark, New Jersey, November the 16th through the 20th, which they have every 4 years after the election to begin to plan and strategize what our response is going to be to the results of the election. So having said that, let me say that we've been working together all along, because no one entity can bring about change. I purposely don't use the word reform because the criminal justice system rejects reform. It hasn't reformed. We've been talking about reform for over almost 45 years in my life. I served as a police officer from 1970 to 1994. I served as the executive director of the National Black Police Association from 1987 to 2010, and that's all we've been talking about. And the institution talks about it because it's palatable for them. But what we really need is restructuring. We have to restructure the criminal justice system, and not just in terms of policing, but the whole criminal justice system. Entry through the system is through arrest, so that's an important component. But if we do anything, we need to throw out the model that we have now and start all over again. I'm a proponent of community control of the police. We have that. It exists in several international countries. In the U.S., it's something similar in L.A. In the L.A. Los Angeles Police Commission is similar, but not thorough enough or comprehensive enough to do the kind of things that we really need at this point. So this is something that we've been talking about for some time. And I'm not just talking about community control of the police. I'm talking about community control of the institutions in our society. Because policing, there's an intersectionality that takes place when we talk about the criminal justice system and the other components of our society. So simply restructuring police is not going to get it. We need to talk about how and what that means when it comes to mental health. I have a 32-year-old son who's a person with autism. He lives with us. He doesn't speak. He makes sounds. He's 6 feet tall and weighs 220 pounds. And when you call the police, if he was having an episode, when the police got there and seen him behave or go through his episode, then they would shoot him because they're trained to shoot people who do those kind of things. So it's not just policing, it's not just mental health, it's schools and the whole 9 yards. And so we've been working on this all along because we could not afford to have done or be able to do this by ourselves. I've been working with community groups, student groups, seniors groups, of which I'm a part of now myself. A variety. And the optimism that I have today is you all. Because you're in their face. You are not accepting the stories, the things that they're talking about today. That's the optimism that I have, because the fact of the matter is I've lived longer than I can expect to live. I'm truly, and even if I do live longer, well, I had the capacity to be able to be involved in this. And then too, the energy you bring a lot of energy to this. And what I've seen over the last 10 years at least is the kind of energy and the partnership and the coming together to work on the issues that really mean something in our society. If we're going to have it, again, it has to be restructured, and there's just so much work to do. We can't afford to be sitting around waiting for someone to come help us change the system. If it's going to get changed, it's going to change it because we're involved in that process. Anything less than that is unacceptable.
Yeah. Thanks, Ronald. So yeah, there's so much work to be done. How can the arts and the work that Ronald was talking about link together? And what does it look like when arts and politics come together? Like what does that impact? What does that look like? What does that feel like?
Well, you know, the enormity of it is really. It's hard. I think there are a couple of things. Part of it is the education of self, and that means some hard. When we talk about, you know, there was a phrase that I used at our last, the last event, radical empathy, and I learned that from a student, you know, who was 17 years old, who was looking at how she was going through navigating the world. And I think when you confront yourself, there are some hard challenges about how you've been educated, how you see the world, someone's identity versus their essence, and it's only in really doing that, and you know, as the coalition has said, that you can really start the healing by feeling what bias do I have, like for real, what bias do I have? And how am I going to change that? And that changes to me in the micro activity of the daily life, the quotidian way of how am I going about my day as a political act, number one. And I think number two is that in the stories, you know, I'm a full-time composer, producer, and the stories that you tell are really important. What are you bringing out onto the stage, onto this world? And if you're doing or writing a story, I'm writing an opera with Tazewell Thompson about police criminality. And I'm going to have to do some thorough work. One of the reasons why I'm studying with Professor Sturm, CivPro, here at Columbia University, is to try to expand my mind so I can look and reflect the world that I see and bear witness to it. Because of my whiteness, I am allowed certain privilege, and it is really up to me to check it and use it. And you know, when I was conducting, and I miss conducting, but I realized that there are conductors. Harriet Tubman was a conductor. We can be a conductor. Things can go through us to other people in the small way, which you said, which I think is unbelievable, to reach out, but also to pull along and to not, you know, resist the savior, the swooping in, because we have to check that as well in order to reverse the paradigm of a completely white board of people of color when they are collecting and producing. We have to resist that and that's the activity. And that's what I mean by checking oneself first before going out into the world.
I similarly will just say that as a white person, I feel an enormous responsibility to consume art that does not reflect my experience, to go and see theater and movies and engage in culture that is not just about my experience. I think because I'm not a creator, I'm an interpreter, putting myself in artistic endeavors or putting myself in stories where the either the cast or the creatives are from a diverse background, that it's not a bunch of white people telling a bunch of white stories about real estate or something. That I am participating in trying to tell a larger story. And I think it's so interesting this evening we've talked, the story, or the people that have spoken who have kids. I have an 18-month-old, and I think it changes everything. I have a white boy. Like, we need another one of those. And I'm like, what are you gonna do about it? And I feel that the arts are one way that I can expose him to the world, that I can expose myself to the world, and I feel a real responsibility there. And I think being a parent is actually, now as an artist, I felt like that was my mouthpiece, and now I feel like as a parent, I have a new way in and a new responsibility.
For myself, I think that the moment I realized that as an artist, as a dancer originally, there was something more than just the act of moving my body that was pushing me and dragging me on the stage and pushing me to take those classes and hurting the body, go back to it, injured again, go back to it, and having this drive. And the drive was really from my heart. My heart was, how can I possibly inspire more? How can I bring more hope? And that really became this component in my artistic form that once I became more aware of it, and I realized that I wanted to be using my art as a weapon for peace, and that I will be going on stage with unrelentless passion about how to be on the stage, but not just on the stage, off the stage. How do I go backstage? How do I treat my peers? How do I connect with younger audience members? What do I say to them when I speak to them? Because I do believe that as artists, there's a level of courage that one has to have that is beyond one knows that you have. You have to have that kind of beyond, that courage that actually brings your heart closer to someone you don't know. And it's that part to me that is so specific. And it makes me, personally, it makes me a lioness, literally. Like, I won't give up. The day I realized that artists could be using their art for peace, you should never stop. There's no stopping. So even when your body says no, you go on. Do you know what I mean? So it's also about meeting who you're meeting on the stage and the level of respect that you can have, and understanding that we are here together, united, human, and going beyond what it is known to be. And that means peace. Peace is not out there. We know that. It's not difficult to see. But hope is not out there either for most people. But as an artist, it is our duty to bring that to the stage. We need to bring the audience to a level of possibility for a world with peace and kindness. And also a world with balls to the walls, because we have to have those. You have to have those, right? But I do believe that art is one place where there is no boundaries whatsoever. There shall be no boundary. Even if we say, "Oh, I'm a black artist, I'm a white artist, I'm a Jewish artist, I'm whatever artist." At the end of the day, when you chop that off, and you just go on a stage with your heart wide open, that's when magic happens to me. It really is magical. I come from background, by the way, I'm from both races, that is black and white. My father was white, my mom is black, and I love every minute of it. I don't take one away to make one bigger or whatever. I love the community of inside of me, of those two things that allow me actually to reach out branches and to go beyond what is known, the colors. And I feel that that's what the artists can do. They can really bring that. I'm someone who is a Buddhist for 23 years, and someone who believes that peace starts right here with me speaking to you who's taking a picture right now, or me being close to you who I don't know. And I believe that it will continue to be that way as long as I continue to believe in my heart. Yeah, so that's that.
Thank you, Karen. So we have 7 more minutes on this panel, and this is a heavy question. But how do we engage artists to participate in these conversations? Because we've called so many people in our community, and I think people are afraid to have this conversation because either they're afraid that what they may say may affect their casting opportunity, or they're afraid that they're gonna say something and people are gonna look at them like, "Oh, you're this kind of person, and I thought you were that kind of person." So how do we know that we need the arts to be a part of this conversation because art has power. I'm here because of art. I'm alive in this place because of art. But how do we encourage artists to participate when fear and worry and doubt come into play with your expression?
Passion, and there's also another thing, affiliating yourself with the people that you know are moving forward with you, including the ones that don't move with you. I think that the people that don't move with you, they are as powerful. You need to know who they are, and you need to move forward. There's a company called ICAF, if I'm not mistaken. It's called International Community of Artists for Peace. Herbie Hancock is part of it, as well as Wayne Shorter. It was created by President Ikeda, Daisuke Ikeda. And it is about this. It's about how do we, as artists, continue to move beyond. It's international. So they were in Hiroshima not too long ago welcoming, or they did a huge concert for all of the people, the surviving people of the Hiroshima bomb. And we have that kind of power, and I think that including, going beyond the here, going let's go all out. And that passion will bring people in. I really believe that. Your passion brought me here.
From a historical perspective, well, that was between you and him, right? But it's all right, though. Oh, no. No, that's fantastic. Really, truly is. What I was going to say is that it's part of our history. The struggle, the one that we've been in for years over a variety of things, have been one that included people in the performing arts. In the early days, while I was a police officer, I was an activist, and I worked with individuals from the performing arts community because they were involved in putting together documentaries some years ago when a gentleman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was shot and killed by the police by the name of Johnny Gamrich. It was for people like yourself who put together the film that talked about it, that brought Johnny Gamrich's family justice. We've been working together with this community for years. Someone who's sitting here, I happen to proud of the fact that I'm 72 years old, so I can talk about the history of struggle and the fact of the history of the partnership between the performing arts community and the activists. And I mean, we know of people like Harry Belafonte. We know of other people. As a matter of fact, a lot of the work that Richard Pryor and Mooney, who worked with or wrote for Richard, talked about these very issues in comical ways, but the fact of the matter is that it drove the point home. And so there are we have a history of working together because we can't get this done by ourselves. I've worked very diligently over the years with the formerly incarcerated community because they have walked in those places, and who better to talk about the mistreatment, the mass incarceration issue, the issues going on in prison are those who have been incarcerated and who are now free, but still in some way suffering under the incarceration, the residue of incarceration, because they can't vote and other things. So if we educate ourselves about the history and the past of the struggle and the roles that we've played and the complementary roles that we play with each other, we can't help but work together. We can't help but be stronger in this process because ultimately we need one another. And it's not going to get done just simply because we say we need to do it. We need to study, we need to educate, we need to be vigilant in this process in terms of getting it done. You can't take no for an answer. I'm not taking no for an answer, and I never have. So we got to push forward. What do we have to lose?
I think along with that, though, I would say, and I agree. I mean, an evening like this is for me like a Thanksgiving meal. I think we also, and I'll speak for myself, I would like to encourage our community to have, I've always wanted to have Janine's Festival of Failure. I actually pitched it to City Center, and they're like, we don't think that's gonna work. I was like, why? So catchy. But I think that it's really important to allow failure, mistakes, mess, discomfort, imprecision. One of the reasons why I wanted to take a course with Susan is about the precision of language. In fact, it's exclusive, but I think that people, I don't know, like I lost a record deal and no one ever told me because no one ever wanted to face me. The secretary, thank God for her, said, look, he's not returning your calls because he doesn't want to talk to you, because he doesn't want to disappoint you, because he doesn't want to face you. The deal is off. And I thought, that's it though, right? That's the uncomfortable thing. People don't want to face each other and talk about race because we're afraid to offend. We don't know, and the imprecision of language, and language is very important here, how we make mistakes, and I think that's why you had to call a lot of people and say, so I would also like to see, my question is, how do we invite the mistake where someone could say, see that thing you said, not okay, and I'll tell you why. Let's educate ourselves so we leave here better. But to be silent is the enemy.
I also think that a part of that is, I keep coming back to white privilege, but that is my place at this table, which is that we have to do so much more listening, and that our almost main responsibility in this transaction is listening and then speaking up in the moments when we are able to use our privilege. And I think so many of the artists that I know who are white are just, the conversation shuts down because they feel nervous to say the wrong thing. And I think if they were in more diverse rooms, I think if they had more exposure to the conversation, then they would have tools to have the conversation. And that just listening to stories is a big part of that, and goes back to the arts and consuming art that it doesn't reflect yourself.
May I? I also think that history is important because we need to know where we came from. That's my personal point of view. At the end of the day, I feel we need to drop the history and deal with the present time and to really go eye to eye right now. What kind of world do you want to live in? What are you bringing into the world with me? And that, to me, gives a possibility for something that may not have happened before. There will be mistakes, but if we believe in our visions, and truly, I think we are in a time that's, oh my gosh, unprecedented. The mess is grand, right? It's out there, for sure. Yet, it's like, that's where we can start something amazing. I really believe that, and I believe it starts truly, like the other panelists were saying, it starts with really knowing that right now, it shall start with me. We are the politics. And if I believe that, then I know that every moment of the day, whoever I am facing in the subway, in my deli, in my backstage, or wherever, in my yoga studio, on the yoga mat, that what is that moment of me that wants to separate because the person may have bumped me and they look different than me? But what is that part that I can cultivate that goes, maybe they just didn't have a good day? And I can move on from that. So that moment to me is where we can start to actually spin the wheel maybe a little differently, like global shifting that, you know what I mean? Not go into the trap of, well, she's of different colors, she will do that, or, you know. So I want to encourage the present time. I want to encourage what we do now, which will shape the future. Not saying no to the history, and also building the courage when that person says something bad to you or me, I'm saying to me, to have a moment of not going into reaction. That's that big moment, like of going, okay, Karine, can you stand there and just not react, knowing that it could have been this, but what if it wasn't that? Can you stand in the discomfort in the place of what if it's possible that we can actually transform that moment, and I don't fall in the trap. Myself, I don't fall into it. I don't care about what they do, but can I? That's the present magic to me.
Thank you. I just want to say, how many artists are there in the room right now? Artists, if you're an artist, if you feel like there's something that you could express out of you artistically, raise your hand. Everybody is an artist. We all create something. We are all artists. And I want you guys to know that with this platform that we have gave birth to with BAC and Columbia Law School, you guys also have access to the things that we have access to here. So if you want to get with a law student who can tell you why exactly our system supported the killer of Trayvon Martin to not be punished at all. There's a reason why that guy was let out. There's a reason. There are laws that said you deserve to not go to jail. I think that as artists, we have a power of illuminating that knowledge that seems like it's only for the people who have the opportunity to be educated on that, and we can use that to illuminate knowledge through our art. So if you're interested in doing that with us, please Facebook us, message us, because we can't do this alone. We have to all work together, and we want you to know this is not a secret platform. This is a public platform. Words on White. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. And yeah, we're wrapping up because we're over time. So thank you, panel. Can you give them a round of applause one more time, please? Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. We're going to do a quick wrap up. Thank our panelists one more time for being amazing. Thank you guys so much. So first of all, we want to thank you guys for coming tonight. Please give yourselves a round of applause. You could have been anywhere on a cold Sunday night, but you are here. We want to thank a few people: Sean Haggerty on sound, Matthew Eckelman, who has been taking photos all night, making us look fabulous, Mr. Ben Antonio on camera, every volunteer, every crew member, every performer, speaker, panelist, our accompanist, Brian P. Whitted, everyone watching via live stream. We want to shout out Playbill.com and Broadway Black for helping us get the word out about the invitation. We are so incredibly grateful and gracious. We're not really gracious. That wasn't the right word, but I like it. We're gracious. If I babble my foot when I say it, it's fine. We want to thank Words on White for being here, doing this wonderful art. Remember, at the end of the night, we're going to raise the 2 chalkboards, and feel free to write any words that are a response to what you've experienced this evening. Christian, our social media correspondent, Christian Dante White, a round of applause.
Thank you.
Please tell our friends how they can stay connected to us via all of our interwebs.
Yes, we are on Facebook at B-Way Advocacy Coalition. We are on Twitter at B-Way Advocacy Co. and Instagram at B-Way Advocacy Coalition. Stay connected with us. We want to continue these conversations. I know like people in the audience might have things that they want to say. People on live stream may have things they want to say, or something might come up later. Go to our Facebook, talk about it, post something. We're going to give you some homework in a minute that you can do, because we want this conversation to continue and to share information, to share knowledge, to share ideas, and have a hub or someplace to come and say things like we did up here, because we can't have everybody on stage talking. So we want to have that Facebook and Twitter to tweet us and say things to us, because that's what it's all about, that we continue to grow and have those conversations.
Absolutely. And in continuing growth, we're at Columbia. It is a school. School's in session, so we have homework. One of the biggest questions we get asked is always, what can I do? How can I help? What can I do? I think a big thing that really stuck with me tonight is what Miss Rebecca Rad said, which is it starts incredibly small. It is about meeting your neighbors. It is about supporting local businesses, inviting someone you meet in your neighborhood, on your street, in your brownstone, on your block to dinner. It's about finding common ground. So we wanted to give you guys some small things that you can do to start being politically involved. So, how will you participate? This is November's assignment. These are some things, some ideas that we want you guys to think about. Make a quick little video of yourself and post it to our fabulous interwebs, our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter. So, what will you do this month to be heard politically? Now, we all know what we're going to do on Tuesday, which is go and
vote.
Absolutely. So, amen. I didn't say it, but he did. We want to know, why do you feel it is important that your voice is heard? How can your skills and interests aid in the fight for social change? Share a time when you stood up against ignorance and created a platform to empathize and educate. This was something that Karinya talked about, which is shifting the atmosphere. I was in Whole Foods. I told this story to BAC. I was in Whole Foods waiting in line. I was very hungry. And you know they have the little monitors that tell you when you go. And I'm standing there, and this white man, when they called my 25, he walked up to 25, and I got so hot and so angry and black in 10 seconds. Y'all, I know this white man sees me. I know I'm not invisible, blah, blah, blah. So I said, Amber, don't go cuss the man out in Whole Foods, because you like to come and get your shrimp and crab legs, and you don't want them to have your picture on the wall and say, do not let this lady get her shrimp and crab legs. So I walked over to him and I prayed. First I said, Lord, give me the right words. And I said, excuse me, sir, I just wanted to let you know I was next, and it's okay. He goes, oh my goodness, I didn't know. I thought it was the cue. The man was from Australia, y'all. He didn't know. And I was about to go cuss him out. But instead of cussing him out, I took a moment and said, let me shift my atmosphere. Let me not cuss the man out. And I created a moment for empathy and education.
At the Whole Foods. Who would have thought?
At Whole Foods. At the end of the day, he offered to buy my groceries. I said, sir, it's okay. Just go out and spread kindness. And that was an honest moment where I felt like I had a choice, and I made the right choice, and I can still go buy my shrimp and crab legs. Thank you very much. So the next thing we want you guys to be active. There are things that you can watch, read, and see. So we want you to go on Google, go walk around your community, find an organization in your neighborhood, get involved, and share it with us. If you're working with the Boys and Girls Club, anything, just let us know what you're doing in your neighborhood. Something to watch, you've heard it 10 times tonight, 13th, Netflix, Ava DuVernay, it is beautiful, watch it. Here are a couple books that you can read. I think a few of them were mentioned tonight. If you take out your phones, you can take a little snap of this so you
We'll
can take
also
this
post
home.
this on
This will
our
be on
Facebook and
Facebook.
everything.
A couple books to read. You can go see a play, Notes from the Field, Anna Devere Smith at Second Stage. About the school to prison pipeline. These are all things that you all can actively do to be full participants in your community. Yes? Have we had a good time tonight?
Yeah.
Like Janine said, has it been a full Thanksgiving meal? Thank you guys so much. Please stay tuned for our December series. We will announce it on our Facebook and our Instagram and our Twitter. Those selfies you took, post them. All these wonderful ideas and things, post, share, invite someone, bring someone next time. Thank you. We love you.
Thank
BAC,
you. Get home
Columbia
safe.
Law School.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night, guys.